Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Allen. I am the IC3 Community Manager. IC3 is an academic blockchain research initiative based at Cornell Tech with researchers at 9 global campuses. You can learn more about IC3 research and our industry partners on our website, initc3.org. So today's webinar topic is attacks on Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. Our first speaker is Yen Ji. Yen is a PhD student at Cornell, advised by IC3 co-director Ari Jules. And Yen, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Yen. Today, I'm very glad to introduce BDoS, Blockchain Denial Service, which is a new family of incentive-based attacks to US blockchains. This is joint work with researchers from Technion, Cornell, and IC3. So blockchain technology is developing prosperously today. More than 8,000 cryptocurrencies are in the trading market. Today, the global crypto market cap is over $1 trillion. And more than 70 of them are coins of Nakamoto blockchains. Nakamoto consensus is proved to guarantee safety and liveness under the honest majority assumption. Miners are incentivized to honestly follow the protocol to gain block rewards. However, whether the protocol is indeed incentive compatible is in question. Well, a straightforward prerequisite for such motivation to hold is that the mining profitability must be greater than 1. If mining is no longer profitable, miners lack incentives to keep mining. But even when mining is profitable, BDoS attack still enables an attacker to render a blockchain to a halt with significantly fewer resources when miners are rational. Note that our result is not conflicting with the proved security of Nakamoto consensus, because we're assuming miners apart from the adversary are rational instead of altruistically following the protocol. Before we go into how BDoS works, let's first see why there might be DOS attacks. We can think of a few scenarios where a government or organizations are interested in sabotaging a specific coin due to some external incentives. Another possibility is wars between coins, where miners affiliated with specific coins are interested in destroying a competing coin, like the hash wars between Bitcoin SV and Bitcoin Cash in the end of 2018. By DOS blockchain services, the relative coin and tokens might be devalued. Thus, traders might also gain from short selling. Let's also have an overview on the difference between BDoS and previous DOS attacks. So previous DOS attacks target individual system components, such as an exchange, a mining pool, BGP routers, or some nodes. In contrast, BDoS utilizes incentive mechanisms to motivate rational miners to quit mining. This could stop the whole chain from functioning. For example, previous DOS attacks are usually expensive due to the decentralization nature of blockchains. For example, they need to conduct massive network resources to eclipse a node or take up 50% of the total hash rate to break consensus. In contrast, BDoS is an incentive-based attack. There's no need to spend too much resource on monopolizing the network, so it's less expensive. In the meanwhile, previous BDoS attacks require continuous resource expenditure to maintain the attack. But with BDoS, once the system comes to a halt, the attacker doesn't need to keep mining anymore. Thus, the long-term operational cost for the attacker is almost zero. To understand the attack better, we will see a correct run of the blockchain first. So initially, there is a block that all miners agree upon and keep mining on it. When a miner finds a new block, hopefully all the miners hear about this block and it becomes the most recent block that all miners agree upon. The miner of the new block gets a certain amount of block reward, and so on. This is the regular case. An alternative scenario is that when two miners each finds a block within a short time difference. In this case, the protocol dictates that all miners should choose to mine on the block they heard first. The case when there are two chains of the same height is called a fork. So when a new block is mined to break the tie, all miners agree upon the longest chain and resume to the regular case. We call the discarded block on the shorter chain often block, and the miner of that orphaned block doesn't get any reward for it. Note that resources used to mine the orphaned block, B3 here in the graph, is wasted. So in BDoS, the attacker takes advantage of this feature. Overall, is the behavior of honest miners. So for BDoS, we view mining as a slightly different setting. We have two types of players in the game. So one is rational miners. Rational miners are profit-oriented with no external incentive. They honestly follow the protocol, but when mining is not profitable, they turn off their mining rigs. In contrast, the utility for the attacker is external, different from those profit-oriented attacks such as selfish mining. The goal for BDoS attacker is not to maximize the attacker's revenue, but to cause a blockchain to cease functioning with few resources. In BDoS, the attacker commits to an attack and will not deviate. Okay, now let's see how the attack works. So initially, similar to what we saw before, all miners, including the attacker, agree on the most recent block, B1. If the attacker finds the new block, instead of publishing the entire block, she publishes only its header, and the attacker stops mining at this point. Now, the rational miner encounters a dilemma. He has two main actions to take. One is to keep mining on the previous block. The other is to stop mining for a while when the attacker has this advantage of the leading block. Let's take a close look at both of those strategies. So if he chooses to keep mining, whether or not he realizes that the attacker has an advantage, either him or some other miner that remains mining finds the next block at the same height because the attacker is not mining at this moment. So it's one of the rational miners finds the next block at the same height as the attacker's block. The attacker now immediately publishes the data that corresponds to the block header. In this case, we get a race condition. We assume the attacker has some rushing ability, just like in selfish mining. So there is a non-negligible proportion of miners in the network receiving the attacker's full block data first. Therefore, those miners will follow the attacker's block. If the attacker's branch grows faster, the miner of the orphan block loses the game and gets zero reward. Therefore, for a rational miner that keeps mining in the dilemma, there is a risk of losing reward of a block. Let's take a review of strategy 1. So if the miner keeps mining in the dilemma, this cost remains the same as usual, but the expected reward is significantly decreased. Thus, in the long term, the profitability is decreased. Now let's see what happens when the rational miner chooses to stop mining. So again, the attacker finds a block and publishes the header only. Then the rational miner turns off his mining rigs. There might be some other rational miner that remains mining and finds the next block. Then the attacker immediately releases the full block data. Now the rational miner we're considering should resume mining because now the expected reward is the same as usual. No matter which branch wins in the race, the miner of the new block B2 star always gets full reward because it won't be often. So those two cases are equivalent for the rational miner mining at this moment. If during the dilemma, all rational miners choose to stop mining, since the attacker is not mining either, the blockchain stops growing and comes to a halt. So overall, for a rational miner taking strategy 2, there's no operational expenses or income. If other miners keep mining, then at some point we will return to initial state and our miner will continue mining. If no one remains mining, the blockchain halts. So given those two strategies, which one will a rational miner choose? To formally analyze this, we consider case study for a single rational miner PI. And we consider mining as an infinite game without a discount factor. The rational miner aims to maximize his utility, and the utility is defined as the expected profit per unit time in this infinite game. We aim to find the condition when stop mining is the dominant strategy for PI, meaning that No matter what strategies other miners choose, stop mining is always more profitable with respect to our utility function. We compute the utilities of two strategies using Markov chains. There are only three possible states: the initial state when all miners agree on the same most recent block, the dilemma state when the attacker publishes a header, and the race state when block at the same height as the attacker's block. I'm not going into details of the transitions here, but by comparing the two utility functions, we found that when the peacetime mining profitability is not too high and the attacker possesses a certain amount of hash power, stop mining is dominant. Here, peacetime means when there is no attack. All miners follow the mining protocol. Therefore, the minimum hash rate a BDoS attacker needs is a function of the peacetime mining profitability. Actually, there's an additional strategy that is petty compliant and sometimes observed in practice, which is called SPV mining. SPV miners might mine on the adversary's block header without receiving the full block data. We prove that SPV mining does not change the results. Detailed analysis can be found in our full paper. So let's review our results. What does it mean in practice? Well, to evaluate the attack in practice, we need to first compute real-world peacetime mining profitability. So the mining revenue is straightforward. It is just a function of the coin price, mining difficulty, block reward, and the miner's hash rate. However, what are the mining costs? Miners have two types of costs in practice. One is called CapEx, capital expenditure. It includes mining hardware, software, space, if owned, etc. The other type is OpEx, operational expenditure, which includes electricity for running the mining gear, cooling, space if rented, human labor, etc. The difference in cost between mining and not mining is the electricity and cooling cost. In our analysis, we only take those two expenditures into consideration for the peacetime mining profitability. So, the electricity price varies across the world and seasons. Most mining farms are located in Sichuan, China, where hydropower is rich and electricity price is low. In wet seasons, it is as low as 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and in dry seasons, it is just 6 cents. We assume there is an additional 15% cost for cooling system. So collecting those data, we are able to plot the real-time operational profitability. In this graph, we assume the electricity price is 4 cents per kilowatt hour. We also assume the most profitable hardware model is available whenever it is released. Well, this assumption is very conservative because in practice, miners might not always get the most profitable model due to the delay of shipment, manufacturers, or budget. So overall, based on our conservative assumptions, we have an upper bound estimate of mining profitability. Then we plot minimum hash rate required for BDoS attacker on the different peacetime mining profitability. An important thing to note here is that the attacker can choose the timing of the attack. So the security of the system should be characterized by the weakest point in time. And as we could see, on March 13, 2020, an attacker with only 21% of hash power can stop all rational miners from mining, assuming the electricity price is 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And for 6 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity, the attack threshold is as low as 1%. While the effectiveness is sensitive to the peacetime mining profitability, we also found that the attack can even be more effective under a more practical model. So when an attacker publishes a block header, instead of stop mining, a rational miner can choose to mine a different chain that uses the same hash function. Many coins have identical mining algorithms, for example, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and they also have similar profitability. So as you can see in this graph, the y-axis deplots the ratio of the probability of two coins. They are there's slight difference, but it's approximately about 1. So we can consider this new model, two-coin model, where the miner chooses to mine on the other competing coin instead of stop mining. So in the case of the profitability of coins is similar, an attacker can always reduce one coin's profitability, causing migration of rational miners. Detailed bounds on two coins profitability ratio and attacker's threshold can be found. In summary, vDoS is a new family of incentive-based attacks. It targets Nakamoto blockchains, requires significantly fewer resources than previous attacks. And the lesson to take away is that blockchain security should not rely on altruism. We should, in practice, when we deploy a blockchain, we should always consider the behavior of rational nodes. For more details, check out our full paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yen. And it looks like we have time for a couple of questions. So if anyone would like to ask a question, you can just unmute yourself.
Hi guys, I have a few questions actually. If you have time, I have four separate issues with the validity of your assumptions that I would like to hear your comments on. I can do them all at once, or I can do them one at a time, whatever you think is easiest for you.
I guess we have time to do it one at a time. Okay.
All right. So let me do the first one first, because I think it's the most important one. So overall, the way I see this is that your assumption of what constitutes rational mining behavior is incompatible with actual miner behavior. So the vast majority of miners are actually contractually penalized by their electricity provider if they simply shut their miners off. So they tend to have offtake agreements in place, and if the penalty of violating their contractual offtake agreements exceed their projected benefits from stopping mining, which you assume to come from the avoidance of paying electricity costs, which I don't think is a good assumption, they won't do it. How would that impact the results of your model?
Thank you. That's a very good question. So there are basically, we can assume there are like two types of miners. One is like of larger scale who owns the farms, and the other are like individual miners. Those individual miners, they might do not have a direct contract with the electricity provider. So our assumption applies to them. But you're right that this assumption might not directly apply to those large-scale miners who owns farms and have like different contracts for electricity. But still, our attack could motivate those individual miners to stop mining. And in fact, if there are still some altruistic, so if miners always keep mining, no matter whether if there is an attack, we call those altruistic miners in our model. And even if there if there are altruistic miners, that actually raises the bound of the profitability for those individual miners to quit mining. So it's easier for an attacker to motivate individual miners to quit mining.
Okay, so sorry, let me make sure I get this straight. So you're saying that there are individual, like, do you see these as small scale miners, these individual miners? Okay, but you're still assuming them to be professional mining outfits that are continuously watching the network for this type of attack.
We're not assuming, but we are claiming that it's in their interest to do so. They can ignore, but it means that they are losing profit.
All right. Okay. All right. So do you also think that, so at SPV mining is, there's a single percent optimization that miners do to increase their profitability. I mean, if this type of attack happened even once or twice, don't you think that SPV mining would simply stop? Like, people would stop doing it? because the risk of having a block, even a single block orphaned, especially by a small miner, is so large that they'd probably be very disincentivized to do SPV mining.
Exactly. SPV mining is not considered to be a secure behavior for the rational miner. But in our case, we put it into consideration, but we claim that SPV mining, even if a rational miner performs SPV mining, this is not getting any gain.
Okay. All right. And so with the coin switching assumption, the assumption there is that you can switch over and, you know, the other coins, because they are in a sort of ongoing equilibrium, will have similar profitability levels. But say that you had even say that you had this 20% attack that you're proposing, and 80% of hash rate then, under your assumption, would flow over to saying that they wouldn't shut off. Let's say that they can't shut off because they have offtake agreements, right? They then move over to these alternative chains, but all of them have block by block difficulty adjustments at this point, which would drive their profitability pretty close to zero very, very quickly.
You mean by rushing into another chain, raising the difficulty?
Yeah, no. So I mean, 80% of Bitcoin mining going into, you know, any of the majority SHA-256 coins like Bitcoin Cash or whatever. I mean, it would blow their difficulty completely up and extremely quickly because of the rapidness of their difficulty adjustment algos as compared to Bitcoin.
Yes, but when difficulty rises, we consider in the mature market when the price of the coin will also raise.
Okay, so your assumption is okay. So this again, this is not like current existing market assumptions. It is like a future possible state where there are stable equilibria, I guess, between competing coins that could, you know, handle the liquidity issues that a transfer of 80% of hash would have. And I mean, okay.
But this is not necessary. I mean, this is a very interesting question, but it is indeed very complicated when we come to the model of true coin. And there could also be attacks that miners just migrate between two chains. They might get better profit. So yeah, you're right. This is more complicated than one coin model.
Okay. My fourth one is actually one that you mentioned yourself. So which is just detecting the attack, right? It's quite easy. But I guess that does fit into your altruistic mining assumptions. So I'm pretty happy with that. Thank you for answering that, by the way. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And also, you raised since you raised that question regarding detecting the attack, the goal is not to detect the attack. The goal is to knowing the signal of some attacker has an advantage in mining. So the attacker doesn't necessarily need to, like, while releasing the header, the attacker might just say, hey, I have a leading block. And it is no one knows which block, when the block is released, no one knows that, no one can link this block to that attacker. So then knowing there is such attack is totally fine. Doesn't affect the effectiveness of this attack.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Yan. That was a great presentation.